Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What really happened in England's Rendlesham Forest and its adjacent air bases in 1980? Will there ever be justice for the many U.S. Air Force personnel and officers who witnessed some of the most shocking UFO events ever recorded? And is the paranormal becoming depressing?
Depressing. Anyway, hello and welcome to the 166th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. And on our Monday Drive Time show on WOON 1240 AM and www.onworldwide.com, I'm Ben, and asking those cool questions. Cool? Well, kind of. Well, it's kind of. Yeah. Well, it's kind of cold outside, so yes, it's cool questions. Was my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad.
Well, we'll try and keep you interested, everybody out there, on this really rainy, windy New England day.
I like it.
Coming home from work, whatever you're doing, stuck in traffic. Just stay with us and we'll make it interesting for you. Now, we have no guests this evening. It's an open line show. And we're dedicated, the numbers, of course, let me give them to you right now, is locally in our own area, 401-766-1240, and nationally, anywhere in the USA, 800-449-1240. Now, it is an open line show, but we're dedicating it to the heroes of the 81st Security Police Detachment at Rendlesham Forest, 1980. Now, I will explain that shortly if you don't know what we're talking about. Now, our show and our friends and neighbors from the CBS Radio Sunday night lineup, that's the guys from CAPS Paranormal, have been hosting a series of radio roundtables with witnesses from the Rendlesham incidents, the 30th anniversary of which will be
this by the way, that's December. CAPS with a K, not with a C.
CAPS with a K, right. Thank you, Ben. Podcasts of these return to Rendlesham specials, along with those of all our other shows, are available on our show website, behindtheparanormal.com. And the next one, Return to Rendlesham 3, will be this coming Sunday, next Sunday, August 29th, on achieveradio.com. During our 2-hour monthly special there. It's internet only, I'm afraid, but the specials, we had huge ratings on CBS, but we suffered from some really, really bizarre interference and technical glitches that the network couldn't explain. So
we ended up taking it off early.
Remember, we lost the last half hour, the last 3-hour show, unfortunately.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, so strange things happen, especially in the whatever, so we're moving over to the internet. So we're pulling it off CBS and into that monthly slot I just mentioned. So full details, again, are on the website, behindtheparanormal.com. So please visit Justice for the Bentwaters 81st Security Police at Rendlesham Forest 1980. That's their page on Facebook. And show your support, at least by becoming a member of the group. Now, see the link? It's a very long link. I'm not even going to try to give it to you. Go to behindtheparanormal.com, and right up under the What's New section is the link to that site for the Justice for the Bentwaters 81st. Okay.
And back down to the ground, our weekly contest, our paranormal contest, is still in business. Last week's question was, what ghost supposedly haunts a riverbank in the towns of Rio Frio, Texas? And the answer was the White Lady of Rio Frio.
The White Lady of Rio Frio. Rio Frio is, I remember my rusty Spanish, is Cold River.
It's really catchy.
Yeah, so the White Lady of Rio Frio. Anyway, quite a few tried to answer that, but everybody failed to give us just the answer we were looking for, so we had no winner, I'm sorry to say.
All right, so let's try something else. This week's question is, what Inuit village in Canada's Northwest Territories supposedly disappeared without a trace in 1930? And if you can deal with that, call us locally at 401-766-1240 or from anywhere in the U.S. at 800-449-1240. If I don't announce a winner during the show and you still think you have a shot, drop a line to me at benditbehindtheparanormal.com.
Okay. And that's a weird thing, a whole village supposedly disappearing in 1930. Now, there's a trick to this. So anyway, but it does have a name, so give us the name and you win the book, which is a copy of Supernatural Vanishings, Otherworldly Disappearances by Rodney Davies. Somebody I've been trying to get on the show. Hard to reach.
Yes.
So again, we have an open line show this evening. We'll try to catch up on some of the emails that have been piling up from listeners. We could do an open line show every week and not run out of emails. And once again, we're making a special effort tonight to support the Justice for the Bentwaters 81st Security Police at Rendlesham Forest 1980 page on Facebook and the effort that page reflects. These guys were abused, ridiculed by their own superiors, their own government. And some of them were high. One of them particularly was the XO of the base. He was the second in command of the base. He's been on our show, and these fellows, after 30 years, deserve some kind of justice. And I was very pleased when during our second Rendlesham special, Nick Pope, formerly of the British Ministry of Defence, who was on our panel, officially apologized on behalf of the British government to these fellows for what happened, but I thought that was very gracious of Dick to do that, and certainly long overdue. Anyway, Ben and I are doing what we can to support that with our radio series. Again, Rendlesham, Return to Rendlesham broadcast. Check the website for the next several. We're going to do it up through December monthly.
All right, so our call numbers once again. It is nationally at 800-449-1240 or locally at 401-766-1240. And now is a great time to call in, and there are the numbers.
Okay. And we have lots of emails to cover, but before we get to that, I wanted to give you a brief background on the Rendlesham case in case you don't know it. Now, the Rendlesham Forest incident, this is a very simplified version, but basically it took place in and around Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England, and two adjoining NATO air bases in December 1980 over a period of 4 nights, because that's been debated. Numerous U.S. Air Force officers and enlisted personnel, a number of whom have been guests on our show, reported seeing not only strange lights in the sky that behaved intelligently, but also several strange craft, at least one of which landed and was touched by at least 2 witnesses over a period of 45 minutes. On the controversial final night, a craft reportedly hovered over the weapons storage area at the base, flashing beams of light onto bunkers rumored to contain nuclear weapons. And here's one of the hot spots, because this would have been a violation of international treaties. So nobody's saying whether there really were nukes there. But maybe, apparently, whoever might have been flying these craft might have known about it, but who knows. No further information on that is available. There are unconfirmed reports that these, and again, I have no idea whether this is true, that whatever was shining lights down onto these bunkers deactivated the nukes. So whether that's true, I don't know. Photos and videos were supposedly taken by the Air Force in a tape recording by base XO Colonel Charles Halt, whom I just mentioned, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, who has also appeared on our show, details his entire experience in the forest on that first night. That tape has been publicly broadcast on many occasions. Some experts consider this the most significant UFO incident ever recorded.
All right, so as if we didn't stress earlier before, feel free to call us about this case or anything else paranormal that's on your mind as we start our emails.
Okay, so let's move to the emails as we support our friends in the 81st. Okay, here's an interesting question, and we asked this last question as we opened about depression. Is the paranormal getting depressing? Okay, let me explain that. This is from Melissa K. in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. That was a little joke I said K. Anyway, yes. Paul, I've heard you mention several times on your own show and others that the paranormal should be a sign of hope for us, and its ultimate meaning should bring us together. I certainly agree, but I've noticed a certain negative trend in the paranormal thinking. And there's a little dash and says, at least on the other many paranormal shows I listen to. Even you sometimes mention that we are sometimes farmed by parasitical or demonic entities, and that they might even have a hand in our governments. Somehow I don't find that hopeful. Just thought I'd comment, and my best to Ben. I love his brief but thought-provoking comments. Oh, well, at least someone likes those.
Everybody appreciates it. Yeah, applause, please.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you man a few words, but when you do say something, it's worth hearing.
Yeah, well, no.
Well, yeah, I'll be the judge of that. All right. Okay. Our live audience is enjoying a chuckle. All right. Okay. Now, Melissa, I see what you're saying, and actually, I've noticed the same trend. Our guest last night on our CBS edition was a man who was very, very into UFOs. It was Nick Redfern.
Yes.
Very well known expert in many areas of the paranormal, particularly UFOs. And he happened to mention a new book that has to do with the negative nature of grays. which
Yes.
are the common UFO occupants, and speculation that these are really very negative and may be clones, may not even be biological entities in the sense that we understand them. This, plus many, many reports of negative ghost activities, seemingly by parasites, we would call parasites. Yeah, there's a lot that's negative going on in the paranormal. So people say, well, how can I say that it can bring people together and that it can provide hope for the human race when we seem to be victims of this cosmic circus that just jerks us around half the time?
Well, you see, I guess it's more than like, oh, well, they're just jerking us around for the heck of it, or the hell of it, because it's not really saying that it's a fish. But what I'm saying is that we're out of balance with everything around us, so that's probably why stuff is happening like this.
Yeah, I think that's very true, being out of balance, because that's one of the messages of the paranormal. See, when I say that it is a positive thing, it's because it can show us how things really work. The unofficial motto of this show is everything you know is wrong. And I think that's quite true. Everything you know historically, scientifically, paranormally, even theologically, has been misinterpreted, humanized, to the point where, we are, I suppose, so arrogant that we have clouded our own thinking, especially in the West, where we can't see the big picture because we're specialized, we're categorical thinkers, we don't know anything anymore because we're so separated from the earth. And I think the paranormal can show us the way out of that. It requires a lot of changes and a whole new way of thinking. But I think that essentially the message of the paranormal is that once you understand something, and even in a whole new way, you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. Once you understand something, you can, to a certain degree, figure out ways to get around it, or live with it, or even, at times, control it. So what we're saying here is that...
control is not a good word, because look what happens when we try to control everything around us.
Well, that's true. Yeah, well, we try to... Yeah, perhaps it's not a good word, but the point being, we don't have to be victims. And I'm always telling that to our listeners, especially women. You don't have to be victim anymore. And whether that's from abusive men or whether it's from a parasite, because we have a lot of cases over my 40 years, certainly, where women have been very vulnerable to attacks by these, what we refer to as parasites. You might call them demons or whatever you want to call them. Whatever word you use that's not quite up to the reality can be applied here. So the idea is that the paranormal can teach us how things work. We can learn to understand the really strange and unusual concepts that you have to understand the paranormal. Because I always say, it's not understanding the paranormal is not the problem. It's handling the explanations. Other worlds, other people right next to us whom you can't see, but who are fully alive, body and all. All these paranormal experiences perhaps being the interaction of all these different kinds of worlds. I think once you get your mind around that, and it's not so hard to do that, you don't have to be afraid anymore. You also don't have to be alone anymore. Because when you realize what all this really means, this kind of existence, that it's not just here and now and you, it's here, there, everywhere, past, future, you and me. We are all together in this explosion of divine love known as the multiverse. And it's not against your religion. It's just a new way of looking at what we've already always known. So that's what I'm saying, that in the end, the world is what we make it. Life is what you make it. But we can do far more together than we ever could alone, and the paranormal can show us the way. Strange concept, but I think it's absolutely true. Don't be afraid. You don't have to be depressed. It's a depressing time. Maybe you've lost your job. Easy to say. Maybe you don't have enough to eat. I've been there, and it's easy to say. But in the end, everything will come out all right. I really believe that. And it's up to us, because the world is what we make it. We don't have to be victims. So that's my response to Melissa here in this. If you want to know more, just drop us another line. And and here's one more point. I'm a news junkie because I was in the newspaper business for 30 years, journalist and all this stuff. And one of my jobs at the Providence Journal, as a matter of fact, when I was an editor there, was to listen to CNN and other news operations and 24-hour news stations. There weren't as many now as then as there are now. But there comes a point where I just had enough. And now you have to remember there are so many news agencies that have to fill 24 hours with something, and they'll grab anything. I literally read there was a cat in a tree in Ohio a couple of weeks ago. It was national news. I mean, what is going on here? You can get very depressed. So every once in a while, I think, despite the fact that we need to be informed citizens and responsible citizens, shut off the news now and then.
Yes.
You know? And some of these paranormal shows are really confuse you. So shut off them, except this one. All right. And anyway, that's just another idea. But Melissa, take heart. We're all in this together. What was Red Green say?
You just said it.
We're all in this together. So we're going to get through it, and I think we're going to get through it well. I think we're all going to be pleasantly surprised.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Ben, do you have any more thoughts on that?
Nope. You pretty much covered everything.
Young people getting depressed because of the... I mean, they have plenty to get depressed about, but...
No.
People who are in
too busy with high school and paying for cars and college.
Keeping busy. Well, that's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
all right. Here's one from Jake Gennaro in Detroit. Dear old WYCD.
Michigan. Okay. Hi, Paul. I guess I'm one of those feral ghost hunters roaming in packs, quote-unquote, that you and Ben don't like. But my quote-unquote pack, and I like you and listen to your show faithfully because you have unusually long experience and ask good questions. As much as we respect your work, we don't think that your multiverse theories, at least the way you interpret them, fully explain what we experience. We rely a great deal on EVP conversations, though I know you have doubts about these. You say you don't believe that ghosts are spirits of the dead, yet we have ghosts who claim they are dead and remember how they died. How do you explain this if they aren't dead?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for writing in, Jake. I think I understand what you're saying. EVP, for those who don't know what it is electronic voice phenomena. It is something that Thomas Edison speculated about, but has not really been done widely until the modern day when everybody has their little tape recorders and stuff. And what it is they record so-called spirit voices and this sort of thing from people who are supposedly dead. And my only question is, well, if they're really dead and they're not real people in parallel worlds, where are the vocal cords to make the darn voices that you record? All right. Another thing seems to be that they are received on the AM frequency very often, and this seems to be the trend on that. And my question is, well, does the guy on the other side have an AM transmitter? I mean, I don't. So there are a lot of questions about this. I don't mean to make fun, because I've recorded EVPs myself, had a lot of interesting experiences with this sort of thing, but I kind of take it with a pillar of salt. Right? There are plenty of other explanations for it. However,
we could be wrong.
We could be wrong. That's the first thing I always admit is we could be wrong. Our views on the paranormal are very different.
But also relying on technology is just a statement that we are not. Well, I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that, but we rely on technology too much. We are drunk with it. We do.
Yeah, we always say we were drunk with technology in this society, and we rely on it. However, to respond to the question here, which I think basically is, you do run into entities who say that they're the spirits of the dead, essentially. But is that what they're really saying? I'm always going after the assumptions that we have about everything, never mind ghosts and this sort of thing. One of the assumptions we have about ghosts very often is that, not everybody has this, but it's a common assumption. Whenever you, quote, cross over, or whatever term you use for dying, you automatically know everything. Well, I think that's entirely incorrect.
That'd be cool, but...
Well, yeah, I suppose, but it's just, know everything, whether you've chosen the wrong religion.
What if there's nothing to know?
Well, that's a very Zen statement.
Well,
I think you're right.
It's true, because if we knew everything, then...
Well, there are all sorts of speculation about epistemology and knowledge and how it works. But the idea here is that I have run into entities over the past 40 years who, first of all, seemed entirely like ghosts. All right, they were saying they were Aunt so-and-so or your mother or something, or whatever particular family I was working with, and something just didn't seem right. I made it known that I didn't believe it was what it said it was, and a lot of people don't do it. They don't question. I questioned everything, and the thing would change completely. Turned out it wasn't what it said it was. So I don't trust these critters.
I
don't trust them as far as I can throw them. And I have managed to touch a few with them.
And throw them.
Not quite, but I did feel bone structure. So, I mean, is this a spirit? What the heck is that? So I think that relying on experience, I mean, you cannot trust what they say. However, there do seem to have been entities, people. I just call them people. I don't think they're. I still think they're existing in parallel worlds where they're just as physical as they are here, who are in worlds that were very confusing. Gee, imagine such a world. Aren't we confused? And these entities, these people would say things that they thought were true, but actually were not. For example, someone would say, "Oh, I lived in this house." One told me one time for many years, and it was this, and this in this town, and none of it was true historically. Now, does that mean the thing was lying? Not necessarily, or the person, I should say. They were simply remembering a different world and a different time stream, right? So it can be very confusing. But I don't think that EVPs necessarily prove anything. They very often say what the listeners want to hear. And while Dr. Barry Taft disagrees with us on this, he said on the show recently, I think it's very possible that the people who are doing the recording, at least sometimes, are projecting the voices onto the recording device. And I actually knew Ted Sirios, a fellow very popular from the 1960s and 70s, who was able to look into the lens of a camera, just look into it, and record on the film what he was thinking about in his mind. Sometimes he didn't even need a camera. He could just look at a package of film, and the image would come out on the film without even going through a camera. So could the same thing be happening with some EVPs? Could people be projecting voices onto them?
Perhaps.
That's the only other explanation for EVPs not resulting from vocal cords. Now, again, Dr. Taft disagrees, but there are all sorts of possibilities here. So I respect anyone, Ben and I both respect anyone, who is a sincere seeker after truth. But many of the feral ghost hunters roaming in packs, quote unquote, as I say, they don't talk to each other. They never seem to. Their data never seem to bring us anywhere, and with some exceptions. And I do, as I say, encourage people to search for the truth, but to try and do it. Get out of the box a little bit.
Think outside the box.
Yeah, think as the cliche goes. Think outside the box. Try and be a little bit more imaginative and bigger in your thinking. Look at Eastern thought, not just Western thought. Don't necessarily categorize, etc., etc. And
read
we have
the Tao
a
of
call.
Po.
Okay. Hello, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
That's good. I'd like to try to answer your trivia question.
Sure.
And I'll admit up front that I just looked it up.
Well, I'm sure everybody does.
But is it I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right, but is it the Lake Anjakuni Eskimos?
And we have a bingo.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Okay.
Good
Well,
job.
that's good.
Actually, what I read on it, I thought was very interesting. They said that not only was the village of 2,000 people completely empty, but that all of the sled dogs were buried 12 feet under snow, and not only the living villagers, but also the ancestors who had died, their graves were empty.
Okay. Now, let me give you a little background on this case. You have lots and lots of things in the paranormal literature like this, okay? But when you look into them, and I served in the Arctic in the military, and being a journalist later too, I kind of decided to look into this. And what I found was with this and a number of other cases, things tend to get embellished.
Okay.
Now, the RCMP, which is not just a bunch of guys riding around on horses with red ceremonial tunics on.
Talk like Dudley Do Right.
Yeah, they're probably the finest national police force in the world, because I've worked with them. They would tell you that this never happened.
Okay.
Okay. Now, being government arm of the government, are you going to trust that? Well, maybe not. But I think that the story has been embellished. I have never talked to a witness, though I've tried, because it was 1930. So take it or leave it. But, I mean, that is the story, and you got the right answer, and hey, you win this great book. Okay, so if you would be kind enough to, can we get off the air? Okay, and we're going to have the producer talk to you and get your, where do you live, by the way?
I live in Massachusetts, in Millville.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and give Craig your information, and we'll send you your book. And thanks for calling in. Did you have anything else? We're talking about a lot of stuff today. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
This is only my second time hearing you. I didn't know that you were on, Owen. All I have to say is just that I very much enjoy listening to it. I don't know that I agree with everything, but I certainly find it very interesting.
Well, that's good. Well, we like disagreement. We certainly get a lot of it, and you're very welcome to call in any time.
Okay.
Okay, great. And
Well,
Craig will
thank
take
you.
your information. Okay, very good.
Appreciate it.
Have a good
All
one,
right.
sir.
Very good. Okay, we had a winner. That's now we have another question here. This is from Margaret Perry in Yorkshire, England, and through the wonders of podcasts and the internet. And Margaret is wondering about poltergeists. Okay. Okay, Ben, you can.
Well, all right. All right, so we have had what appears to be a poltergeist for years. It concentrates on one member of the family at a time, but it seems to be able to control itself. It has never really got out of hand. My question is, what do we do if it does? I'm very worried about it starting fires. I've read that they can do that.
Okay. That's a good question, Margaret. We're going past our break here, but what the heck? Hey, we make it the rules, we break it the rules, right? All right. Now, Margaret is asking about poltergeists. Now, I have a lot of experience with poltergeists. I've written a lot about them, especially in my book Footsteps in the Attic, where I report probably the what I refer to as the baddest poltergeist in New England. I worked with in 1978. There had been another case before that, which was probably in the annals of the paranormal, that I worked on with several other people in 1974, and it was really wild. I was injured physically with this, and these things can be very dangerous. They say, well, they can't really hurt you. Well, I somehow got except on one occasion, I somehow got the impression that when I was injured it was not intentional, but that somehow didn't make it any better. Also, in the Bridgeport case of 1974, the woman of the house had a broken toe from a flying object. Now, there are a number of questions with poltergeists. The one that you're describing here, Margaret, seems to be of a higher. I don't know. I think there are about 9 different species of these things, and I hope they're in my next book, which is late, but stay tuned. I'll be telling you about when it's coming out. And these things are ranging from very highly intelligent entities. I think all of them are parasites. And they range down to very childlike or childish.
Childish is a better word.
Childish is a far better word than childlike. Even Jesus said we're all supposed to be childlike, right?
Yeah, so.
But childish is different, and some of these lower species are very much like that. They will all, of any species, feed upon the energies, the negative energies they seem to produce. That's the best way I can put it. They are certainly behind our legends, I believe, or stories of demons, vampires, all these sorts of things that have come through in religious belief and in folklore. And I think there essentially comes down to these parasites. So the kind you seem to have here, Margaret, seems to be one of the higher order, which they tend to be very patient, very wise, and I don't use that in a good sense of the word. They're very up on their own needs, and they've been around seemingly a long time. They know about people. They learn very quickly, and they will, what the first questioner really said, they will farm you, for lack of a better term. They will push just enough buttons to get enough to eat, and that's literally what they're doing. These aren't, I don't even think they're spirits. I think they are life forms that dwell between worlds and in very sometimes hostile environments. We've seen cases where they have reached like almost like an octopus from one world to another and fed on whatever's going on there. Strange concept, but that seems to be the big picture. I do not believe that they are produced by the agent, as parapsychology has always said. I think they are, and I've seen in many cases they are actual I've touched one, and this is one of the cases where I felt bone structure when it bumped into me trying to get to a child I was trying to protect, and it was nasty stuff. So fires, the closest I have seen in 40 years to this is when I was sitting in this Bridgeport house in 1974 with Lorraine Warren, the well-known, one of the earliest quote-unquote ghost hunters, she and her husband Ed, and I watched a second-degree burn appear on her hand, just spontaneously. Nobody was smoking, there was no fire anywhere, nothing was hot. And we were very concerned because a terrible phenomenon known as spontaneous human combustion, as Ed believed, could occur in this house. So that's the closest I've seen to fires, but there are well-recorded cases where fires have broken out spontaneously. Here's what you do. I think what you need to do here is to use what I call the Peter Pan theory. Okay, it sounds a little funny, but boy, does it ever work. How do you fight this negativity? You fight it with positive energy, happy thoughts, as it were. I once got rid of the worst poltergeist I ever encountered by using a joke book. Now, that's not to say that religious belief can't help or this sort of thing, but depending on the stage it's in, depending on what the nature of the thing is, bring in positive energy. And one of the most positive things you can do in your family is laugh, not at each other. I'm always telling you and Jonathan that, but bring in positive energy. It's good for your health, and it's good for the positive energy in your home. Find, if in your family you're having problems of any kind, find your common ground. Join hands. Find that love. And believe me, don't wait. When you love your family, tell people that you love them. Don't wait until it's too late. Tell them now. This can build such positive energy in your family that nothing can touch you. Not these parasites, not human parasites, and heaven knows there are plenty of them. And again, easy to say, but it's not that hard to do once you kind of get the knack of it. So I would say bring in that positive energy there, Margaret, and I think you can probably start to put this thing to bed. Pets, although some of them are bothered by these things, whatever's going on. I'd like to know more about your case. Keep us posted. Send us another email. But for now, that's the prescription. Okay, just keep it positive and keep it rolling, and nothing will be able to touch you. And so, okay. Oh yes, Ben is reminding me we're late on our commercial here. We're going to do just a live one here. We are often receiving inquiries about where people can get my books, and I've written 7 books actually, but not all on this subject. I'm also a historian, and I wanted to also mention that down at locally here, we're broadcasting from Northern Rhode Island, the Museum of Work and Culture, wonderful place. In Woonsocket, Rhode Island, down on Market Square, Disney quality exhibits about the life of the working people in the Blackstone River Valley here in New England. The people from Quebec who came down to work in the mills, people before them, people after them, all the various ethnic groups, and plus our people, the old Yankees there, represented. And wonderful place. And in the gift shop you will find copies of not only my book on Rhode Island history that I wrote with in collaboration with Glenn Laxton, formerly of Channel 12, a wonderful fellow, great historian, excellent writer, called Rhode Island, A Genial History. That's in there. Also, my books on the paranormal, Faces at the Window, which has the cases what we often discuss, the famous Bridgeport poltergeist case we just talked about, and also the case in Pomfret, Connecticut, at the Lost Village, so-called. Very, very interesting cases. That was my first one. Really an eye-opener. Really shook us up. Also, Footsteps in the Attic, which has the New Haven case I mentioned, the worst poltergeist, baddest poltergeist in New England, plus a lot of other things, a lot of other case histories. And my most recent book, Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. And this is a more philosophical book. There are a couple of cases in there, but it goes into why the paranormal is so important for our understanding of reality. Where does God fit into all this? What does it tell us about God? What does it tell us? A God being, as I say, a he, she, it, or them. And also some information about how it can bring us together. So that's the book maybe is different from the other two, but you might enjoy that as well. So, and my next book coming up will be, once I finish the darn thing, is Dancing Past the Graveyard, What Ghosts Have to Say About God. And this comes from, again, 40 years of talking to these, well, not really talking, but communicating in concrete ways with these critters, and I'll tell you how that's done, and it's not through Ouija boards or seances or anything like that. So that's coming too, but check out the Museum of Work and Culture gift shop, and you'll be able to find the books there. Also, they're on Amazon and the other usual places. So check it out, and feel free to do that. Now, if you want to order them from our Behind the Paranormal website, here at this, on the show, behindtheparanormal.com, you can get them with PayPal or your credit card or whatever, and I will be very happy to sign them for you for whatever that's worth, and you can get them from there. So there are that's where you can get my books. Any store can order them, etc., etc. Okay, let's go to a little bit of we haven't got much time. Darn it, we burned up the whole hour here. Let me go to some of our paranormal news here. We try to cover that more. People were saying, well, you always say you're going to do the paranormal news, but you don't always do it. So our good friend, UFO expert and humanoid expert, Albert Rosales, who is going to be a guest on the show very soon, we haven't nailed down a date yet, has a wonderful website called ufoinfo.com. And he collects tremendous amounts of information that is really very interesting. And he's a very reliable journalist, and I trust his judgment on what he puts onto this site. So he gives us permission to use it as we go here. Now these are cases from 2009. Now you can go to his site and see cases from the early 1940s and before that, all the way up to the present day, and they just go on and on and on. And these are, again, relatively reliable cases in his judgment, and I think it's amazing. So here we are. January 3rd, 2009, in New Paris, Ohio. The witness, who says he may have been involved in other encounters, was about ready for bed, letting his dog, whose name was Dudley, out for an evening walk. The dog then began barking and used his tail, put his tail between his legs in fear, as dogs do, and he cowered behind the witness. The witness reporting this suddenly felt what he would describe as an extreme static charge in the air, which is very funny because that's just what we feel when we're in these cases and there are entities present. This static charge in the air seemed to cause droplets of dew to quickly evaporate, DEW. Even the frost on the ground turned to steam, and he could feel intense heat. This quickly turned his attention toward the tree line in front of him as he heard a high-pitched sound, only this time it was much more painful, apparently painful to his ears. He dropped to his knees and noticed blood dripping from his nose onto the ground. This came to a sudden stop as a warm, intense blue-gray light surrounded his body and seemed to have a heavy weight on his back, he said, pushing him to his stomach and making his face sort of lie down on the ground. He woke up shivering and naked in his bed nearly 6 hours later. Dudley the dog...
What?
It's the report. Dudley the dog seems to have been scared and barking all day. He wouldn't eat and wouldn't let the witness touch him. He found scratches on his nose and suffered from migraines all day. During the night, he heard the following thoughts in his head. It's okay, we are scientists. You will feel pain shortly, and think of it as a study. What do you think of that?
Well, there's such a thing as... I don't know, how did this dude remember all this?
Well, we don't get into any details here. This is just listed. I can find out.
No, I'm just wondering because there's things like witness subjugation. Like you ask them the wrong questions and they answer it the way you want them to. Like you ask a question the wrong way. Like I was taught in forensics class last year, where it's like, what color shirt was he wearing? But the wrong way to say it is, was he wearing a red shirt? Or something like that. Or if they question the guy like, oh, like, did you hear them say they were scientists? And he'll be like, well, yes, I did. And that's why...
Well, this strikes me as a possible... No, as you should be. This strikes me, if it's what it looks like, a possible abduction case. Right? I mean, it's right with the blood coming down from the ears. But what interests me is that it's the same feelings of static charge in the air that we feel when we're often on cases. So now I know that people... Now, what you're saying is often a criticism leveled at Bud Hopkins. Bud Hopkins, the famous abduction researcher, and he's been criticized for as it were, leading the witness when he's got people under hypnosis.
Yeah.
Asking questions that sort of demand a certain answer. And much as I like Bud, I have kind of noticed a little bit of that in there. So whether this was obtained under hypnosis, I can find out. But this is a report that this fellow, what he says he experienced. So it just sounds to me like a possible abduction experience. If you believe in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, moving right along here. This is from the Al-Qasim region of Saudi Arabia, nowhere near New Paris, Ohio. This is only a few days later, January 7th, 2009, in the evening. Now, Arabic language networks and newspapers have been buzzing around this time with Saudi citizens claiming to have witnessed what is even being described by some in the normally conservative Saudi Arabian press as a possible UFO, either crashing to Earth or simply executing maneuvers designed to scare people. Others are claiming the object was an asteroid or satellite. Witnesses were reported to have been waiting at this time for an explanation from local weather people and the Meteorological Bureau, but they never received any answers. On the 7th of January, it was a Wednesday, after evening prayers, a large noise was heard in the sky followed by the sighting of an intense, large light heading from the west above a region east of the capital of Riyadh, capital of Saudi Arabia. Many locals had seen meteors before this, but claimed that this one did not fit the description of one at all. It was blue-green in color and was shooting out green lasers. That's the way flashes. One witness by the name of Khalid commented, "No one has ever seen anything like it." Now, amazingly, for an incident that hasn't even made the news in the West, it was seen as far away as Kuwait. Locals in the region where the object appeared to be heading claimed they heard an explosion and felt a large tremor indicating that the object had crashed. The Saudi government has not released any information regarding the crash site, but is reported to have sealed the area. Now, who do you think is hanging around in that part of the world? And that's a lot of U.S. troops.
Yeah.
And you wonder if, the U.S. being very secretive about this sort of thing might have had some hand, if this report is accurate and if this really happened, might have had some hand in sealing the area. I wonder how many out there have seen a fireball.
What do you mean?
A fireball is a meteorite that is up in the atmosphere. A meteor hasn't crashed yet. Up in the air and way up in the atmosphere usually, and it's burning to the point where huge specks and sparks and things are flying off the thing. It's really quite a sight. One day I was driving down Mendon Road in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and I happened to see one in the sky, and I pulled over. And I got out to look at it, and it was down by the Route 295 overpass there by the Burger King and Curves and all those places.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really quite a sight. And it went on for a while, and it looked as though it was moving very slowly. It had a tail, but I did not mistake it for a UFO. I suppose if you didn't know what it was, it would be a UFO.
Well, I don't know. They're it's not like they're like in the middle of nowhere. This was like the capital of Saudi Arabia.
That's true. That's true. Or near it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows? We've never been able to find out anything more about that. We'll keep searching. But moving right along, there are some interesting other cases here. This is near. Now we're moving back to the U.S. This is Arizona, near Chinle, Arizona. I assume it's pronounced. We'll have to ask some of our friends in Arizona. This is on 2 days later, January 9th, 2009. Rangers from the Navajo Nation, your friends down at the Navajo Reservation, Ben.
They probably don't remember me.
You're hard to forget.
Yeah.
Rangers of the Navajo Nation Department of Resource Enforcement reported that a Navajo elderly couple and a girl saw a UFO land near their house in a rural area northeast of town. According to the ranger, the occupants of the object went up to the residence and asked to borrow a cup of sugar. No, that's I'm joking.
Yeah.
Okay. Went up to the residence and used what looked like flashlights to look around the house and the outhouse before leaving. I'm not going to comment on that. An area of flattened grass was reportedly found at the site of the landing. Navajo Nation Rangers have yet to interview the witnesses for additional details, and that was as of January 09, and no other information. Geez, when you were down there, you could have looked into that. We didn't know about this now.
Oh, I didn't know about that. They don't really talk about this stuff. I wouldn't talk about this stuff.
Well, Somebody did, and here they are on Behind the Paranormal.
I know, but...
All right. Well,
No.
I'd like to know what the occupants were looking for. The question is, what is going on here? Are these aliens from another planet?
What if they were just U.S. troops dressed up in gray costumes?
Anything's possible. Real short guys, maybe. I don't know. But anything is possible. Their theories range from time tourists all the way to... people from other dimensions, other worlds coming back and forth to borrow cups of sugar. I don't know. But it's anything is possible. And that's what's so mind-expanding about it. I mean, it's not necessarily aliens from other planets, or maybe it is. All right, well, moving right along, we got the
next day.
You want to read this one?
What? No, I'm
Okay.
just saying the next day because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, well, it's almost the next day. It's January 10th, 3 days later.
Oh.
All right. Rockland, California, January 10th, 2009. As a 21-year-old witness had stepped outside his backyard to smoke a cigarette. And to let his 65-pound pit bull do his business. That's a big pit bull. It was dark outside, and there were no lights on or in the house. However, the moon was rather full, so the witness could somewhat see his surroundings. He was staring up at the moon, which was in the westward direction, and his dog was at the fence also on the west side of the yard. He was about halfway through his cigarette when he had the feeling that someone was watching him from behind. When he turned around, he saw the outline of what appeared to be a person standing by the corner of his house near the fence, and he or she seemed to be facing the witness. Immediately, the figure started to run away from the house toward the back of the property, only about 15 to 20 feet away. When the witness's dog heard its footsteps, it ran towards it. 65-pound pit bull, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Thinking that he was dealing with a trespasser, he ran back into the house through the sliding glass door, but left the door open so he could attempt to call the dog inside, fearing for his safety. Fearing for the dog's safety? As soon as his dog reached the figure, it flew straight up in the air at the height of approximately 10 feet, and then flew directly to the far back edge of the property, and either landed on the fence or hovered directly over it for about 2 minutes. Now, I'm assuming he's talking about the figure, not the dog.
I hope it's not the dog.
No. The witness could see the outline of what appeared to be wings or some type of cloak. Aha!
Yes.
Mothman. The witness was too frightened to let go of the door and feared that the figure would come toward him. After a minute, the witness realized that he could turn the outside backyard light on, so he did. And as he did, he could barely see the figure as it went over the fence. His dog continued to paw at the fence as he called for him to come inside. After a minute of calling the dog came inside, and the witness went directly upstairs to wake his girlfriend and tell her what had occurred. All right, now, of course, things come to mind. You're one witness if you don't count the dog. And one of the things we always ask in an investigation of anything like this is who else is seeing this, or who else had the experience, or who else was a witness. And however, that does not mean that it did not occur. All right. So we take this at sort of at face value just for the sake of discussion.
Well, at least I don't know. There could be other people who have seen it but just don't report it.
Well, that happens a lot. Remember, Nick Redfern was as our guest, as I mentioned last night on our CBS edition, was saying that giving a few reports of this kind, talking about the Mothman experiences in Wisconsin. Mothman being a really strange figure who looks like it has wings and has been reported in various areas, particularly associated with disasters that later occur, this kind of thing. And that kind of reminds me of that. Any kind of figure that flies up or whatever. The question is, what are these things? Are they aliens? Are they people from other dimensions where the physical laws are different and they can fly? I mean, it sounds silly, but physicists actually speculate that if this multiple worlds thing is true, the laws of physics might be entirely different from one world to another. And there might be worlds in which we can literally fly. Probably not very many, but this is the kind of incredible circus of speculation we have going on today. So nobody's here to tell us what time.
We got about 7 minutes.
Okay,
a little less.
All right, so let's move on.
Let's just go with 6 minutes 30 seconds.
All right. Let's do Clevedon in Somerset in England, in the west country of England. Beautiful, beautiful place where we have some relatives there. January 23rd, 2009. A UFO has supposedly crashed at a local primary school. All right. giving the clearest sign yet that aliens do exist. This is from a news report. The object, described by witnesses as an alien spacecraft, crashed onto the playing fields at the Yo Moore Junior School shortly before midnight on Wednesday. Again, this is 2009. It then took off again, but as well as leaving a trail of debris behind, footsteps were also found. Police are not confirming what it is, but a crime scene investigator exclusively told the newspapers that, quote, he had never seen anything like it before. Obviously, we're dealing with an alien student driver who didn't quite... No, I shouldn't be joking. And that, in his opinion, it appeared to be alien. A woman named Mrs. Symes of Baytree Road said she was walking her dog about 2300 on Tuesday, that's about 11 o'clock at night, on Wednesday, when she heard an amazing noise, quote-unquote. She said, quote, initially I thought it was an aircraft having trouble, and then I spotted this strange-looking rocket-type machine falling to the ground. It crashed at the school, and there was a huge explosion. Her dog was going berserk, and she suddenly felt very frightened, so she ran home and immediately called the police. Quote, when I was on the phone, I heard engines start again and saw the rocket take off and disappear within seconds. The police cordoned off the school field. Now, there are elements of this you might wonder about. If it's shaped like a rocket, I mean, what do we got, like a model Rocketeers here going on?
1950s?
Yeah, I mean, or again, there are worlds where this probably still happens. I don't know.
That's
rockets.
really funny.
You know what strikes me about this?
What?
There is an emergency manual in every single fire station in America, probably around the world these days, that has in it an entire chapter or section of a chapter on how to deal with UFOs. A lot of people don't realize most police stations have this as well, and it deals with a scenario in which a UFO crashes at a school, and in which you have bodies and things to be dealt with, and it tells you what to do. Wait till federal authorities arrive, and it goes on and on. And we have a call. Hi, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Hello. It's Bill from Franklin.
Oh, Bill, okay.
I saw something on July 3rd. It was at 10:30 at night, and I was watching fireworks, and there was something over my head, and it was a round object. And I looked up, and it shot right up into the cloud real quick. But it was round and white. It had some kind of writing on one side.
Uh-huh. Now, this is in Franklin?
Yeah.
Franklin, Massachusetts, we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, July 3rd it was. And above all the clouds, it was kind of partly cloudy. It was like a full moon.
Uh-huh.
And it was the last quarter moon that night.
That's extremely interesting. This area is kind of has a history, as you probably know, about... especially going back to the 60s, Joe Ferrier could tell you some stories about...
He's the only other person I told about this.
I see. Well, it strikes me as interesting because there was a report, and I wish I had it with me, but I don't. But in downtown Woonsocket, the city we broadcast from, there was just such an object seen over the main street, zipping above cars, and all kinds of people saw it.
Somebody from Woonsocket saw something towards my area because they called his show afterwards.
Interesting.
After I mentioned it.
Okay, very interesting. That was very interesting. Well, we're down to 2 minutes. We're going to have to let you go, my friend, but thanks for calling and call in anytime.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
A little bit of a UFO report there from our home area. Okay. Well, we remind everyone that the Exeter UFO Festival is coming up on September 4th, Saturday, September 4th, in Exeter, New Hampshire. Of course, and that's the area where Betty and Barney Hill were allegedly abducted by UFO occupants in 1961, creating a sensation in news around the world. First time that sort of thing was reported as widely as that. Info is at www.seacoastonline.com. Main speakers will be our good friend Stanton Friedman, Peter Robbins. The event is free and sponsored by New England MUFON and the town of Exeter. Any money raised will benefit local children's charities. Ben and I have been unofficially invited to set up a charity broadcast booth there, but nothing official yet because the town fathers have to approve it, and maybe they don't like us. No, I'm sure it's just taking a little time. So hopefully we'll be there too. We'll let you know next week. Again, check out our website at behindtheparanormal.com. And many thanks to our producer, the great Craig Pelletier. We'll see you right here next week, Monday, August 30th on WON 1240 AM, ONWorldwide.com, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Our guest will be the great Dr. Bruce Maccabee, national security expert and authority on UFOs, who has a uniquely scientific perspective.
All right, so next week is our end of the month Behind the Paranormal Marathon, and we begin on Sunday afternoon, August 29th, with the return to Rendlesham 3, the third in our series of historical broadcasts bringing together experts' witnesses to the shocking UFO incidents at Bentwater/Woodridge Air Base in England in 1980. And we'll move that from our CBS show to our Achieve radio show. You can hear it live, 3 to 5 Eastern, noon to 2 Pacific, and you can catch our podcasts at our show website.
Okay, and we're just about done. Remember, Justice for the Bentwaters 81st on Facebook. Check it out.
We'll see you next week.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.